let's give a refresher before we start. So, every time I do the tier list, it takes me about 3 days, 3 just chatting sessions for us to go through all the items. Today is range. We're going to be measuring stuff from S, which is insta-pick, all the way down to the F tier, which is you just throw that thing in the garbage can. If you pick it up, then may as well alt F4 on the spot. Hey, Alice. The way how we select the items, I go from top to bottom. And this is in order, kind of by release date. It starts with the always unlocked stuff, and then it goes all the way down to Rise of the Giants. And that's the order I'm going to stick to. This is mostly about the items as they are. There's a couple of things that, because you can find a fix, it makes it like far superior. But it's never a starter fix, and we're not talking about legendary items either. Like if you find a legendary boomerang, that's a lot better than a normal boomerang. A legendary lightning is a lot better than a regular lightning. But like a legendary Firebrand, that doesn't really do anything. But no matter what, we forget that legendaries exist in this scenario. Also, the last time we did a ranged tier list, this was back when you could use double items in 1.4. They got rid of that. And now we are stuck using one single item. So boomerang, for example, actually was that? Yeah, I think it had to have been 1.5. But boomerang, for example, we used to use double boomerangs, and it was actually nasty. That's no longer a thing unless one's legendary. Hey, Shu. Looking forward to see Hemorrhage a B. Well, we had a good Hemorrhage game, that last one. No spoiler though, I can't say where it's gonna go, but that last one with the legendary red Hemorrhage, that game was something else. Alright, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Again, this is a tier list for version 1.5, well, 1.6 now. It's a tier list for version 1.6 from my perspective for 4BC and higher. So that means even though a lot of this stuff still translates to the lower divisions, some of these things have more and better affixes when you're playing on the higher difficulties. And then this is, from my perspective, if you find something up here that you aren't necessarily in agreement with, if you're the biggest fan of Bow and Limbless Quiver, if you think the rocket launcher should be an S rank, that is perfectly okay. It is 100% viable as an S on your tier list, but for my tier list, it might be a little different. And that's okay, because that's what makes the game so great, is that we can all have preferences for what we like, and we can win with that stuff. Hey, Asunder. Yeah, the broken poison clouds. I actually posted that as a bug, so we'll see how far that goes. Alright, so the first item on the list, Beginner's Bow, that was put in the meme tier, because you're obviously not going to use that. Multi-knock bow. So multi-knock, one of the first items that you're ever going to see in Dead Cells. You load the game up, you think you're hot stuff, you go through prison quarters, you pick this thing up, you start shooting zombies. The zombies do die. They definitely die. As you continue to play the game, when you get through 2BC baby jail, when you get through first time 4BC, when you get into the 5th boss cell, this thing starts to get a little not as strong. It's a cool item because the DPS number, and I'm actually going to go out on a whim and say that some of this stuff is not updated. Yeah, I have a feeling that this electric whip hasn't been updated for version 1.6, and neither has the throwing knife. But when we're talking multi-knock, the damage at 190 is actually the second strongest base DPS weapon in the game for range. But when you think about how range works, the DPS number is like really tough to just look at. So stuff like Sonique Crossbow, this 136 is probably what it's gonna do. It's really difficult to get this 273, but Repeater Crossbow, this is what you are really trying to build towards. And if you don't, then it does this 160. Magic Missile, for example, always does this, but it does other stuff too, like having flotation, having auto target, and things like that. So multi-knock, which I think shoots 9 times. No, 6 times. It has 6 shots like a revolver with 18 ammo. I just don't like it. I plain don't like this thing. It's slow. It has, at base, 6 shots. Some stuff has less ammo than that, so we'll get back to that eventually. It doesn't crit. So really, all it's gonna do is the exact same damage no matter what. So it's a pretty vanilla weapon. And for the most part, when we were doing the melee tier list, I'm actually gonna pull that up. The melee tier list had space for what we call placeholder items. And the placeholder items are actually like usable, but you get rid of them ASAP. There's always something better than a placeholder item. Yeah, like Asunder's saying, there's no reason to take this over the other stuff. This is just here for, okay, it dropped out of the tubes, and now I'm gonna take this to get out of prison quarters. Or maybe like a 60 door. Maybe like the first one, the first Toxic Sewer 60 door gave you this. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna take this into the next map. I'm not gonna keep it forever. It's gonna do something. But as soon as I can get rid of it, it's long gone. Compared to like an F rank where it's like, I'm not even gonna try to use this. You can't pay me to use these items in the F tier. Alright, next is the throwing knife, which is funny because throwing knife is actually a starter item. It's always unlocked. And it actually got buffed, but I'm not quite sure if I know how much damage it's supposed to deal. Throwing knives bleed, damage, and duration increased. So I'm gonna assume that the base damage of the throwing knife is the same, but the bleed damage was increased. Now, what does that mean for us? That means that if you load up a monster with throwing knives, there's a better chance it dies compared to in the past, where you load it up and now you're just sitting on no ammo. You're sitting on an empty clip, empty banana clip after throwing all your shuriken out. And that was always unfortunate in the past. So much so that we had it as an A tier. Maybe it actually wasn't that bad. But that was back when we could use double kunai, and I was running like speed runs to farm cells by throwing just Sasuke mode, just throwing these things with the owl behind me. Actually, like, nasty. But they got rid of doubles. So I would say it's not an S, but what I will say is that a single throwing knife is actually really good at what it does. Yeah, the dot lasts longer and produces more damage. So in tactics, kunai's purple and red. It's this thing right here. It's split. So purple kunai has the advantage of all of that stuff that deals bonus DPS when you do something. Tactics mutations we're talking about. So we're talking about support. We're talking about Tranquilo. That's the one where you have to be like at max range. And that DPS number goes towards the throwing knife. So that bleed that you might think, okay, so I loaded up the bleed, like where's the actual damage at? The damage is coming from both your mutations and your skills. So for example, if you were to get something like a flamethrower or the double crossbow-matic, I can't find anything because it's like, it's all out of order. This thing right here, any turret, along with the double kunai, along with the kunai or owls. Of course, owls are, you know, what can we say about young owlet? But when you have the dot on stuff, it's surprisingly effective. Where all you have to do is worry about dodging. But what makes this even better is you can throw it while doing almost anything you want. You can float in the air, throwing kunai down. You can jump backwards with like the added hang time and throw kunai while you're trying to dodge stuff. The final boss that does like a jump attack and slams and then bombs. I don't want to spoil too much. You can use the kunai to float in the air and still get damage off. So I actually still really like kunai as an A rank because it does a lot of stuff besides just applying a dot. It's probably best in class at what it does. And there's other stuff that does similar things, but I actually think this is best in class as the throwing item. The thrown item. It's really good. And if you haven't been playing it lately, I'd say please give it a try and just try to kill stuff without doing anything else. Alright, next on the list, the Electro Whip. For those who haven't seen, Electric Whip actually got buffed. They reworked it slightly, more so just added to it. So what it does is it auto targets enemies same way as a throwing knife would. The range isn't as good, but you can jump in the sky, you can hit stuff below you, you can hit stuff above you, you can close your eyes and just like whip it around and probably something's gonna die. It's pretty good at doing that. It's still a 3-hit combo, so it still does the hit with no crit, I believe. So there's a lot of ranged items that don't crit at all. And that doesn't mean that's a bad item, it just doesn't apply Instincto. Instinct of the Master of Arms. Electric Whip S tier could be. Electric Whip stops you mid-air and attacks every direction, super good. This one, and I'm not quite sure, because I actually haven't taken this to the end of the game yet. I've been so focused on every other item in the game, I actually haven't had that many Electric Whip games. The games I did have were actually pretty decent. Like, I remember taking one into the giant fight, and I'm pretty sure the whip actually hit both the eyeball and the fist. And I don't know if that was luck or if that was skill, but it was actually kinda decent. So, I do think it's very strong for almost the same reasons as the kunai. What I would say is out of all the auto-targeting stuff, so for example, Magic Missile, kunai, Pyro is almost there. It's probably second best in class. Like right below the kunai. I think if I had a game, I would probably use kunai over Electric Whip. I don't know if Electric Whip's bad enough to be a B though. When do I not take Electric Whip? Based on skills. I think if I had a long cooldown skill, I probably don't take Electric Whip. But even if I were to do that, stuff like the knife dance, because remember, Electric Whip is a weapon that applies bonus damage for almost every affix in the game. You can have an Electric Whip that does bonus to bleed, bonus to poison, bonus to flame, like all at the same time. So the ideal setup would be to use this with turrets. Namely, like Flamethrower that spews poison, or Cleaver that spews poison. And then you get fire from somewhere else, I don't know. Throwing Knife with Electric Whip combo, see, I feel like I'd rather just throw the Throwing Knives. So right now, Throwing Knife to me is looking like a strong S. I can't think of a single moment I wouldn't want a Throwing Knife. Now, of course, the Throwing Knife is better once you start building around it. All things created equal. You have both turrets. You have bleed, fire, and poison all happening at the same time. I would still take Electric Whip over Marksman, over Boneless Quiver, over Infantry, over Boomerang, over Nerves of Steel, possibly over Crossbow, Explosive Crossbow, because I don't think this thing actually deals bonus damage to anything. I think all it can do is crit, maybe bonus damage to poison, but I don't know if I've seen it do more than that. So I actually think I like this. All right, Firebrand. Firebrand though, Firebrand, definitely not an S. The only time this is an S to me is because I'm using it with Oil Sword. And that's not really the Firebrand's... Well, it is kind of the Firebrand that makes that build work. But that's the only build I would take with an Oil Sword. I mean, I would take with this thing. There are... Say, like, using this as a supportive item only. To throw the Molotov and then do other stuff, I feel like is a lot of work. If I wanted fire, I should probably just use Flamethrower. So it's definitely not an insta-pick unless I have an Oil Sword. To have it as an A rank, I don't actually think it's the best fire source unless you're using Oil Sword. Now, there's other fire sources in here that I actually think it's better than. Flamethrower has a cooldown. The cooldown's like 8 seconds. It's actually 6 seconds. It's actually kind of dumb how short Flamethrower's cooldown is. And that's like talking bosses. As you're going through biomes, you can imagine like prison depths. Unless you want to actually pause your gameplay and drop a Flamethrower on every single platform, then yeah, Firebrand has the advantage to that, where you can just play and not have to stop every platform to drop a Flamethrower. So it does have that going for it. What it is also really good at is because it doesn't have an ammo count, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't believe this thing has an ammo count. So for example, if you are running any kind of weapon, really, you can basically just throw this thing out while you're doing all the other stuff. So like you're jumping around, you're trying to dodge the attacks from the giant, you're trying to dodge stuff from Timekeeper, you can just throw Molotov on the ground. Even if you miss the monster, the fire will persist on the floor and she'll walk over it. So I feel like this is a good item to like not lose out on damage, but I don't think you can use this as a primary means of DPS. I think you can only use this in like a no shield setup, because you're basically losing so much damage from having a true primary attack I don't think you can actually have this as a primary. So I actually don't even think it's good in the B. No, I think we're gonna leave it here because I'm starting to think about some other stuff. So I think it's actually gonna be a good B supportive item because we might have some hot takes in the C tier. Because I actually think the Molotov it's good at what it does, but it can't single-handedly win the game. It's just like good at what it does. It's one job. I guess the same could be said about Hokuto Bow. Hokuto Bow is best in class at its job, which is to make other stuff deal more damage. Almost like a assault shield, almost like Rampart. There's nothing else that really does that. So I think it's really good. Somebody say, what's up, bro? Wish you understood anything I was talking about. Big same, King. I'm over here with the... I'm expecting Veedotme spam from Twitch chat every time I say anything about these weapons. But good to see you, King. This thing, though. And this is gonna actually be tough. In the past, I was really debating, and I actually did these together. Ice Crossbow, Frost Blast, and Ice Bow. I did them all at the same time because I had no idea which one I prefer over the other. And I'm gonna actually do that again. Just knock these out as soon as I can. So, Ice Bow, single target, possible to pierce, faster attack speed, longer range. Frost Nova, short range burst, has an ammo count, but that doesn't really matter that much. Hits everything in a wave in front of you, and it deals more damage, maybe? 48 compared to 46. It's the same, so it doesn't even matter. So single with range, multi, I actually think the freeze duration's longer. Freezes enemies in front of you, briefly freezes enemies. I actually think Frost Blast stays frozen for longer. So that's an important thing to remember. And then this is short range, spammable. So you can actually spam it on a single target and it might die. And then if you hold down the button, it does a shotgun effect, kinda. So I actually think that's what I like the most. And this is still tough, but I don't think I've had a situation yet where I actually would take one of these over the other. To me, they still do the same thing unless you're running survival with those specific survival mutations, or you're running like Nutcracker. I think this thing with survival is better than this thing. I think this thing as tactics is better than this thing. I have to make sure this is actually true. So for example, you're playing Owl. Let's say you're using the top 3 builds video, which is Owl, like that's the name of the build is Owl. This thing is actually really good because as you're running through the biome, everything your Owl is fighting, you can just tap triangle and make sure the Owl can kill it before it actually shows up. This, you can kind of do that too, but the idea is that you can hit things sooner. You can initiate the fight at the same time the Owl does, compared to this thing where the Owl initiates the fight and then you can only do the Frost Nova once it gets in range. But in all honesty, I think like pros and cons, they're probably on equal footing. Frost Blast is risky and short range. You could take it out, why not just do that to begin with? So that's why survival is the reason why I would take this over the ice bow. So survival doesn't have as many things that just clears a room without you having to deal with it. Yeah, there's powerful grenade and telluric shock. Those are like your options for just clearing out monsters before they're an issue. Giant whistle is good for a single elite. But besides that, if you aren't confident in just running through a biome with the GK, the broadsword, even flawless, I had a game where I took this thing with. This combined with the mutation that reduces cooldown, that is Heart of Ice, actually pretty good compared to Ice Bow with Heart of Ice. I feel like that's worse. So I've had a lot of games with Ice Crossbow. Ice Crossbow is only good at spamming square. I feel like that's the best time to use an Ice Crossbow, is when you have nothing else, there's a monster in front of you, especially if you have an Ice Crossbow that causes bleeding on thaw. You can actually spam the shot. It comes out like a freaking assault rifle. It's actually really, really good. But that's all it can do. And that will not kill any boss in the game. I've tried it on so many bosses, and I've lost almost every single time trying to use an Ice Crossbow on it. You'd be better off just having any other weapon on a boss than this. Now that's not to say that it can't actually do stuff. That's why it's in the D tier and not an F, because it can actually kill a monster eventually. I just feel like I would take anything else, even from a freezing perspective, I would take it over the Ice Crossbow. You shouldn't spam it. You hit it with a quick shot just to hold a monster. See, but I could do that with both of these. This at a longer range, and this on more targets. It is possible to get an Ice Crossbow that pierces. I'm not sure if the freezing is as long as Frost Blast. Not all freezing is created equal in this game, just as a heads up to anybody. Bow and Endless Quiver, I previously had as the F tier. We sold this thing every time we saw it. What it does, it has unlimited ammo and the last shot is a crit. But the last shot is basically a 3-hit combo. It does 2 hits where it's like negligible damage. Where is it? Okay, you can't actually see what the non-crit damage is. But it does 2 hits with no crit, and then the third hit, he doesn't even do a flip or anything like that. No spin, no like 360 no scope with the last hit. It's just 1, 2, 3, and then the third one is a crit. It's not great. I wouldn't take it over anything up here. For it to be situational means that there's a build out there that actually makes this thing amazing, and I don't think there is. Like, it doesn't even really do anything on its own. What it really is just an item with infinite ammo. Like, yeah, it has a crit. You could pair that with Instincto. You can say that every third hit, I'm gonna get 1 second off of my cooldowns. 1 second every 3 hits. That's not worth building around. Like, why would I take that over Quick Bow? Really, I think this needs to be a brand new item. Just scrap this. If they still want to have a combo-centric bow, then give me like a backflip. Give me like a slide. Like, you do 2 arrow shots and then like you roll forward and then do like a flurry of arrows, or throw the bola, the E-bola, where like the first shot is a regular shot, second shot you throw a bola out and it wraps around the enemy, then the third shot like pierces or something. Like, give me something cool. Right now it's nothing. I don't, if they want a combo centric bow, I feel like they could do much more than what it is right now. Think about Meat Skewer and how cool that combo is. Give me something like that with Bow and Endless Quiver. Let's keep it going though. Marksman Bow. Marksman Bow, as you all know, it is one of the first items that you find. You get it right in Ossuary. Is this right? A timed door that closes after 8 minutes. Is it really in there? Because that's like a new game I would have to play to actually see that. After they changed the 60 door and time doors, I have no idea. But Marksman Bow is your sniper weapon. Basically, it deals additional damage when the monster is far range. And the amount of range you need is probably about the difference between Hand of the King on the edge of the platform and you on the other edge. Like, that's the amount of distance you need to do a crit. I personally find that to be a little far. But if it was any closer, I think that fantasy, the fantasy of sniping with a bow is lost if it's any closer. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of Marksman Bow in general. I know a lot of people are saying to do stuff like you pair it with Impaler, pair it with Spartan Sandals, pair it with Knockback Shield. And all that's well and good, but I don't know if that works on Timekeeper. I don't know if that works on Giant. I've done a couple crits on Hand of the King. I have done it before, but I still think I'd rather have any other weapon against Hand of the King than this. Concierge? Sure, that's cool. You put this thing with a Wolf Trap? Yeah, thank you, Wolf Trap, for saving the day again. Like, almost all of these builds that are, like, bad, Wolf Trap actually makes it, like, viable. I just hate, like, taking this into prison depths. If you aren't fishing for monsters, say, for example, you're trying to rappel down in prison depths, and you land on these narrow platforms that have, like, a lacerator on it, you can't fight that on the platform. You actually have to back away and then shoot backwards. Whereas I could just take, you know, old Betsy here. Well, it's Heavy Crossbow, so I need an H name. Old Heather. Old Heather, you just get right up close and personal and let them know who's boss. But yeah, if the concept is don't go to where it's not gonna crit, I personally don't play like that. Harrietta? Yo, I like that name. I just don't like the idea. I'm gonna be true to myself right now. So I think chat is really trying to convince me to make this thing as a C, because it's good when you're fishing for monsters. Like, that is not something I can argue with. It's good at fishing for monsters. But if I actually, yeah, like Novral's saying, if I actually were to trust my gut, I have to put this thing as a D tier. I despise taking Marksman Bow. The only thing I feel like it's good for is that fishing gameplay. And I can't fish. I can't fish. There, I said it. That's why it's a D. Gonna hit me with the lurk, but have a good stream. Thank you, Ryan. And definitely thank you had a good day off as well. I'm pretty sure we both had the day off today. I almost want to keep it moving, because I honestly, like, I have nothing to say about Marksman Bow. I really don't. It's just I don't like fishing, and I'm not going to pair this with Spartan Sandal or Knockback Bow. That to me is like I'm getting into meme territory, Not to say that you all's builds are meme builds, but that's not the kind of game I want on the tier list. My tier list, that is. Does Ice Bow save you from curse? Yes. Curse death, falling, elevators, spikes. The only thing it doesn't save you from is poison. If you get hit while poisoned, you will still get poisoned and still take damage. Infantry Bow. Infantry, I actually used to value this thing a lot. So much so that I had it in the B tier. And it does actually do stuff. The damage is kinda okay. It's not like the highest crit damage in the game. 189, so it actually does like 30% less than Marksman. And they're like opposites to each other. So Marksman Bow excels at far range. Infantry Bow is supposed to excel at close range. And it does stuff. It's not to say that it doesn't, but it's not an S to me. And compared to the other items that I would expect to have in the S tier, I actually don't know if it's as good as those. And let me try to break this down. Again, this is a solid weapon, just like chat's saying. It actually does stuff, but it's on, at base, obviously you can get more ammo than this. It's on a 5 ammo count. So it actually has less. Hang on. I don't know how many shots heavy crossbow shoots, so that's kind of hard to measure. But it's on a low ammo count, and I feel as though the gameplay, you could do the exact same damage with basically everything else. Now, there are some good infantry bows out there. There's ones that can do poison, some that can do bleeding. You can get like bonus damage to crit. It can actually do a lot of stuff, kind of generically. But I actually think if we're going from a win rate standpoint, like if someone was to ask me like what's the build that'll get me that 5th boss cell, I don't think this is it. It can do it. It can 100% kill the giant, but it might actually be kind of hard. If someone was to ask me for a ranged build to kill the giant, it won't include this. Is it a C? I don't think so, because you can't really build around it. It's just generically good. And C, I guess, doesn't mean it has to have a full build to make it work. It just works without really needing anything. I think that's what C is supposed to mean. I feel like there's not a lot to say about Infantry Bow either. You got your first true final boss with Infantry Bow. It has a special place in your heart. It very may well have that. And I've probably won some games, not in 5-cell, with Infantry Bow. And I probably need to revisit it. I probably do. Just to find like the busted build that actually makes this thing incredibly strong. But if I were to put it on a tier list, I think there's just stuff I would take over it. Unless this was like a rank 12 legendary infantry bow. It's just other stuff. Let's keep it going with the quick bow. Quick bow, previously an S tier. Quick bow actually hasn't had any nerfs. Not really, anyway. Back in the day, I used to think quick bow was kind of overrated. But what quick bow is good at is like, if you're, not to say if you're good at the game, but if you try hard, in Dead Cells, I feel like quick bow is one of the best items that will excel with your gameplay. Now you could say something like Marksman Bow. okay, Marksman Bow, sure, if I like put all my brain power into getting off every single crit with the Marksman Bow, then yeah, it's gotta be amazing, right? If I deal 6 300 damage attacks, that's gotta be really good, V. But the difference is that, like, realistically, that's not gonna happen. Monsters aren't just gonna stand there and let you 6-tap them until they die. They will move. Bosses will try to get close to you, and you will stop critting, and then you have to do something. Compared to Quick Bow, where Quick Bow always works, so long as it actually has the first shot fired. Ammo count, you may have to run ammo. If you're not running a shield, let's say for example you're running Quick Bow with Hokuto Bow, you may have to run ammo mutation. That's just so that's like error prevention to make sure nothing bad happens. If you're running a shield, you can get your ammo back off parry. If you don't like parrying, do you think that parry is too dangerous because this is purple only, there's no green build for Quick Bow, then just use ammo mutation. So I actually still feel like in 2020, until this thing gets nerfed, not quite like a Rampart, because Rampart does stuff that nothing in this game does by making you invulnerable. This thing, however, is just, I don't want to say best in class ranged weapon, like bow weapon, but it's highly effective. And the build diversity is sick with this. Like Shu was saying, you can run Tranquilo with it. You can run support with it. You can run parting gift with it. You can run ammo mutation if you need it. You can run, I think that's it. I guess you could run networking. Networking is kind of weird with this because you'll often get a Quick Bow that pierces, and remember, the pierce doesn't count for networking. You do have to literally put 2 bullets into 2 different targets. But yeah, I think it's an S. I think it is. I think it's legit. It's good. The only nerf I think they could do to this thing is to somehow make bullets not stay in targets for as long. Because like as soon as you start loading up bullets, the rest of your clip is gonna crit. Like you can just unload the whole clip. It's all gonna crit. There's no way to miss a crit except on the first hit. So like that's the only nerf I think they could do. It does, this is kind of a weird part, speed at the detriment of accuracy, but this thing doesn't really miss either. So like I don't really know what accuracy is supposed to mean. It's like really weird. All right, let's try to do 2 more before we play some games today. Oh, the heavy. Oh, Harriet. Henrietta. Previously a triple S. The only item that has ever given us a triple S. So let's explain why I think Heavy Crossbow is so strong. Heavy Crossbow used to be probably like a C tier back in 1.1. But then when Rise of the Giants came out, they added a hook that rakes in the first target. So it hooks in a monster, and then you blap them. Typically all 5 shots. If they aren't all gonna hit, you duck. Because the hook doesn't care about altitude, it just needs to touch the target. It'll hook them in, you duck, you blast, and all arrows hit the target. It's probably gonna die. There's not a lot of monsters in the game that can survive the first shot. For everything that does survive the first shot, the hook is crowd control. It's almost a stun. It's not quite a stun, but it's almost a stun where they can't even defend themselves for the next hit. It hooks them in, you shoot once, you hook them again, and you shoot again, and you just spam that. until the monster's dead. Most monsters can't get off an attack during that. Third use case, the heavy shoddy with pierce. If you get this with piercing, the hook actually pierces. The hook will grab 2 targets and the bullets just fly straight through. So not only does one monster not be able to play the game, you have 2 monsters that aren't allowed to play dead cells. It could even be like twin elites. You know, elites have special modifiers. They can spawn with a twin brother or a twin sister. You have twin elites that can't even play dead cells because you're running this thing. It's even gotten, where is it? I don't think I can actually find it. Reddit dead cells. Can I do top by month? By the way, like, some of the stuff on Reddit dead cells is so actually good. But in here, someone posted a like brute force build to get you into 4-cell, and that build was using the heavy shotgun, the heavy crossbow. I can't find it, but that's like the hit. Everyone knows that this thing's really good. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do it because I don't know anything else to say to keep this out of triple S. Like, yeah, there's some builds that I'm not gonna just rip out my items to use a heavy crossbow. But if I took the heavy crossbow, let's say I was playing melee tactics. I had melee tactics with initiative, invisibility, and disengage. I had 0 mutations to use with heavy shotgun. It still kills all monsters. Even if I had no tactics mutations, let's say I was running survival. Survival still, bar none, amazing. No mutations required. All you need is the pierce. And that costs you what, $1,000? Maybe. There's no way you can get unlucky in 4BC. Yeah, thank you, Shu. And that's what we were talking about with like win streaking. Like, is it possible to just get so unlucky you can't win? I don't think so. Because heavy shotgun, you will get the pierce eventually. Look, Reddit silver to Reddit gold, that's how you know it's a good weapon. That's how you know this thing is a beast. If this thing can get gold on Reddit, you know that's a good weapon. Come on now. Come on. Gotta get some beat up bros in the chat. Come on, bruh. You know that's a good weapon. If we got a Reddit post over it. Alright, last one, and then we'll play some dead cells. Repeating crossbow. The AK. Yeah, take it at triple S. We know nothing else can be a triple S. The AK-47. I used to actually be a hater of this thing. Previously, I had it as the C tier. I was saying, you know, this thing is only ever good when you have Wolf Trap. And Wolf Trap definitely makes it incredible. I wouldn't say to not go for the Wolf Trap. The Wolf Trap definitely makes this thing good. I also used to say that this thing was not that great because it can't shoot bats. And it might suffer on things like the hammer where there's so many monsters that are tanking your bullets. But even then, I'm actually really starting to like the assault crossbow. Repeating crossbow. Damage-wise, it deals 160, so it's probably not the highest DPS in the game. Wait, what? This thing is the number 3 non-critical DPS in the game. Is that true? So like shot for shot, well, it has to be the actual like number of bullets. As a matter of fact, I almost wish it used to say how much damage is dealt per bullet. I think that would be a really cool metric to see. But I actually think repeater crossbow is really good right now. It's good enough to win you almost every boss, except maybe what? I almost want to say Conjunctivious, but if you could get Conjunctivious on the ground, if you can get the wolf trap, that's all that matters. If you can get a wolf trap, your win rate will skyrocket with repeater crossbow. Yeah, Shu is right. What'd you just do? That was hydration. That's the Crystal Geyser brand water, courtesy of the value section in my local supermarket. Wolf Trap Assist doesn't count. So while I want to say that, and back in the day, the tier list used to be like with a notepad on the side. The notepad used to say stuff like works on its own, works with no mutations, works with no other equipment, works on bosses, works on biomes. There was like a number of checks that had to be met in order for an item to be tiered. And that's still like mostly true, but we also began to highly value win rate. Like an item that will increase your win rate. For example, Speight Sword. I'm a huge advocate of Speight Sword with stuff, because with stuff, your win rate is like, you're gonna be Diamond Plus. Signed, certified by Veedotme. You'll be a Diamond 4 player if you run Speight Sword with Vengeance and Last Ring Aura. Really anything, but Last Ring Aura just makes it incredible. This thing, I feel like you could turn yourself into a Plat 3 player if you get the Wolf Trap. Like, if you use the brain power to pass towards that stuff. Say, for example, you got this, and the game presented you with Death Orbs, Crossbow Matics, like all of that stuff. You have to redirect your build towards that assault crossbow. Because if you do, the difference is so much better than using, say, Marksman Bow with turrets. Wolf Trap with this is better than Wolf Trap with anything else. I would say that for ranged, yes. Whether that's enough to put it as an S tier, probably not, because I'll still use Wolf Traps with this, only because this is got movement enabled. Like, I can move while I'm using this compared to this. Wolf Trap with like this thing, totally this is better. So that's why, like, previously I had this in a C tier, but I feel like a C doesn't do this thing justice. I actually feel really good about this list. Not to say I didn't feel good about the melee one, and just a reminder of what melee looked like, you can go to it anytime by doing that command. But this feels real good right here. I feel like this is my dissertation on Dead Cells. I could take this to University of Utah and show the kids in that class, and they'll think I'm a scholar of Dead Cells right here with this list. Day 2 I keep saying tactics tier list, but that's absolutely not what this is. This is a ranged tier list. There's red items, there's green items, and there's purple items. And whatever color this is, I have no idea. I think it's actually purple. The next item on the list is actually the Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt got nerfed, believe it or not. Lightning Bolt was probably the strongest survival weapon next to heavy crossbow, because nothing beats the shotgun. The reason why it was so strong was because nothing in survival can just do that damage for absolutely no reason. Like, there's melee weapons that require you to do a combo, require you to charge your attack. There's ranged items that require you to like time attacks or be at a certain distance away from monsters. Lightning Bolt doesn't really care. You hold square and just deal damage. And if the monster doesn't react to you, it pops. And that's basically what it does. Like, yeah, there's crit. Yeah, you could take damage if you're not careful. But what it basically does is you hold square and the monster pops if it doesn't react to you. If you hold it for too long, weird stuff happens. I don't know what happens when you hold it too long. That's the Reddit banger, the original clip. Obviously, it's not a triple S because heavy crossbow is the only weapon of its kind that does what it does, in my opinion, at least. Lightning Bolt, however, as a tactics-only item, it's still probably, like, nuts to bolts, the strongest weapon. So, like, fresh out of the box, with no other items required, this thing is probably the strongest in all, like, general situations. So there's a lot of stuff in here. There's like quick bow that, yeah, once you start loading up the DPS, probably strong. There's stuff like this, once you get a wolf trap, probably strong. There's stuff like this, as long as you're fishing for monsters, probably strong. But on average, like when all of this stuff doesn't work, this thing still works. The only time this doesn't work is versus hammer, where you have bats flying at you. Really any time where there's multiple trash mob just flying at you and you have to go through the weeds in order to get to the real meat, that's the only time this struggles. Now, whether it's still an S now that survival is gone, like I gave this thing a lot of points because it was so good in survival. And if you look at this, those are 2 survival split items that are in here. So I think as a tactics weapon, I think I'd rather play something else. But this is gonna be like, I really have to think about this. You've had some nasty lightning bolt runs, but if you think about it, they were either colorless or legendary. Yeah, so tactics, lightning bolt, I was never really a fan of. Anytime I played lightning bolt, it was green. And the reason why is because the error prevention, like this does actually lock you in place. There is the chance that, you know, you try to avoid hits and you fail. And survival helps that. With tactics, you might say, okay, if I get the wolf trap, this thing's like really strong. But I feel as though this is equal to that. Just lightning bolt doesn't have ammo and it hits monsters in the sky. It does a lot of stuff that this thing can't do. So this covers a lot of this weakness, but I feel as though this is still in like a good setup, potentially just as good if not better as the lightning. And hey Yoshi, you stopped using it when it became purple only. Big same. Big same. Looking at the damage, 370 compared to 331. The only difference is that it's almost the same without the wolf trap. This will crit on like the second attack, and this will probably get off 2 crits before you have to let go. So I kind of feel as though these are probably on equal footing. Me personally, I would rather have the assault crossbow. That's just like, if I were to have a choice to fight every monster in the game, I think I would rather have this to fight all of them. Not to say that this can't kill all of them. I just think the tactics version of Lightning Bolt is not as good for me personally as this thing. So I think I want to drop it down to the B tier, which is gonna get a little congested here. It's probably better than Infantry Bow. Like, I should probably say that at least. This feels a lot better. Not that Infantry Bow is bad, but if you think about C from an idea of if you build it, it's good, but chances are there's still something better. So, Brutality Infantry Bow, I'd rather use Kunai. Tactical Infantry Bow, I'd rather use this thing or this thing. I'd still use this over this. I'd still use this over this. Okay, I totally went out of order. We gotta back it up. We have to do Explosive Crossbow. Infantry is pretty quick and it has good DPS. It does. It really does. And it can win games too. I just know that if I were to take other stuff above it, I might have an easier time. And this quick bow, in my opinion at least, does the exact same thing as this. And that's why quick bow is an S rank item. Yeah, you're right, it is Hokuto. So Hokuto. Now this is an item, I'm gonna take everything out of Triple S. It's no reason for me to do that. So quick bow, every time I measure quick bow, I historically have never put it in the S tier. And whenever I don't put Hokuto in the S, someone in chat yells at me. Like, V, every time you take this, your games are next level. Like, you meltate bosses, you come out with like the coolest looking builds, like with these weird affixes. You have Hokuto Bow that spreads oil and you're using that with ice shards. And I have Cat here. I think that's Buster's here. You take this with melee items and you end up doing some really cool stuff with poison on top of other dots. You do this with turrets and then you just sit back and let the turrets do all the work. You even do this almost like the Ice Bow, where you're playing Owl's Keeper. Your only job is to keep the owl alive. All you have to do is apply Hokuto and walk. You just walk through biomes, place the damage dealt buff or debuff. I don't know what you would call that. And then the owl just mows through everything. How is that not an S rank item? And back in the day, I would say things like, well, it can't be an S because it needs other stuff. Like, it doesn't actually work straight out of the box. And that's not entirely true, come to find out. So apparently, if you can get a Hokuto that applies poison, for example, one shot from the Hokuto will kill most monsters. If you have a Hokuto that has bonus ammo on it, like the bonus 3 ammo, you can probably shoot regular monsters twice, and they might die from it. That's a big might, but you do have like everything else in your kit. You'll just sneeze on the monster and it'll die. So then the other thing I was thinking was, you know what? Well, what about bosses? I'm gonna take this thing into a boss. I'm gonna apply the dot for a little while. That's gonna run out. I'll apply the next, I keep calling it a dot, the debuff. I'll apply the debuff, it's gonna run out. I'll shoot with the next arrow, get the debuff. Once that's out, I'm out of arrows. What am I gonna do? And come to find out, typically the bosses are dead, or at least having a phase change. And that's why I don't take ammo mutation on most items, is that if you can force a phase change, the ammo will fall out. Like Zunox is saying here, if you have a boss fight that goes longer than 30 seconds with a Hokuto Bow, then there's something wrong. And that's not really the Hokuto's fault. That's the fact that you aren't taking full advantage of this item. Or if you were like running an owl, then maybe you got hit in the first like 5 seconds of the fight. And sure, you might actually lose out on DPS because you didn't have something to go along with this. But chances are you will. So I think for the first time in however many years of tier lists we've been doing, it might be time to keep Hokuto in the S tier. I can't remember the last time we had a Hokuto win. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Hokuto Bow with shots explode with toxicity is the only weapon you'll ever need. Exactly. If you can get that, it will. I've cleared High Peak Castle off just Hokuto Bow, spreading poison. Even if you don't get the one that spreads poison, if you get the one where victims release a cloud, then that cloud will probably kill the monster behind it. Alright, explosive. Explosive crossbow. I normally keep this in the C tier. C tier for me is a little different than it used to be. I feel like there is no such thing as making a build of explosive crossbow. I just take explosive crossbow when it looks right. When it looks wrong, it's a placeholder to me. Now it's good. Like, not to... And that's why I don't really want it in the D tier, because I know it's good. I would rather have this thing over Marksman all day. So I think it's gonna be a C. I'd rather take it... Wow. I cannot stop biting the side of my mouth. I would take this over Triplex Bow. You can technically build around it. Like, if you go with a giant whistle and then Instinct Master of Arms, you can get some real cooldown reduction. And it works in purple just as well as it works in red. I mean green. We have had red explosive crossbows. The best one I've had was a legendary explosive that pierced enemies. So it actually explodes on contact. Then the bullet continues to fire through and explodes on the next monster. It was the weirdest looking thing. But obviously we don't count legendary items here. It's really generic too. This is almost like the shovel of ranged weapons. It just works. It does have a little bit of crowd control tied to it because the monsters will bounce when they get hit. It also attacks in an area. So if there's bats flying above the monster, then there's a good chance you'll kill the bats. If you don't have the ability to like get collateral damage on bats, you might struggle. But then again, you have shields, you have skills. You can even get one of these that fires an phantom arrow upward, and hopefully that will kill a bat. This thing also sometimes struggles against demons. If you get the jump on a demon, it's really good. Like, it can clear in caverns, it can clear all the demons out of a hallway. But if a demon aggroes you from up above and then just starts shooting you without trying to melee you first, there's a high chance you'll miss with an explosive. So typically when I'm using this, I like to pair it with a shield. I could probably try using stuff like Ice Bow, but I don't really like doing that because I just want to fire one time. I don't really like to press square twice with a weapon like this, and if I am, it's spamming rockets. Just like you were playing like Resident Evil with cheats on, you just want to walk through the whole map with the rocket launcher. There's no real reason to bust out the Magnum on any monster. Just use the rocket every time. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to finding the right build to beat the true final boss, I would probably ditch this for something with a little bit of synergy tied to it. Nerves of Steel. Nerves of Steel, previously an S tier. And this thing was an S for quite a while, as a matter of fact. And then it got nerfed. They nerfed it down to just 4 shots. And I don't actually know if they nerfed the damage at all. But it does competitive damage. 213. Yeah, it's fairly decent. And then, just like Quick Bow, it has a gameplay ceiling to it. So it's only as good as the player wielding it. If you are the true Legolas of Dead Cells, you can get off some really good gameplay with Nerves of Steel. I would say the tactics version of Nerves of Steel is not an S. It is probably in the A tier, because this thing does do work. I really hate the ammo count, though. I think you really have to consider how you're going to get your ammo back. The survival version of it, I kind of feel it's worse than the AK. And this is me putting a lot of faith on the AK. Like, if I were to pair this thing and this thing in the same build, so using Wolf Trap or using Giant Whistle, using Death Orbs, using all of that stuff, I think for the most part, I'd rather have the repeating crossbow now. Now, like I said, this does have some gameplay. You can get off some cool plays. You'll look like Hanzo, a straight master level. I don't know what the tier divisions are in Overwatch, but I feel as though you can get off some really cool plays with this. I just don't think it's as good as this. As survival. As tactics, things are a little different. I'd rather have a tactics this thing over this, because in a lot of situations I don't play Wolf Trap when I'm playing tactics. I'm using flamethrowers, I'm using double crossbow-matic, I'm using owls. Owl is actually a really good complement to this weapon, because as you're dancing around looking like an idiot trying to get your ammo back, at least the owl, the flamethrower, the crossbow-matic, all that stuff is still dealing damage compared to survival, where most of the damage is up front. Hey, Crispy. So, if I were to average that out, it's like really in between an A or a B. And it's a good item. It really is. I think I'd rather keep it as an A, just because like it has a special place in my heart in terms of gameplay. I think I'd rather have it over a tactical lightning bolt. Still, again, I'm not saying that lightning bolt's a bad item. It's just in 2020, that ammo count sucks though. I really wish I had something in between A and B. Or people ask every once in a while, like, do I rate it from left to right as well as top to down? And I don't. But in the event I actually did, this would be like kinda here. But I'm sure we'll have other stuff that kind of does the same thing. Alright, so moving on. And that one might be a little controversial, because I used to be a pretty good advocate for Nerves of Steel. And I'm just not anymore. Alright, Carbine. Alchemy Carbine. I used to be a hater of this item. I think in the first tier list, I probably had it down in like the C or D tier. I would definitely say it is no longer a D. I can say that with not, like, spoiler content. This thing is not a D anymore. On the last tier list, it was an A. So I actually came around to the idea of Alchemy Carbine, because pairing it with something like the Hokuto Bow was actually really, really good. So, if it's not a D, and it's not a C, previously I had it as an A, so how do we promote it into an S, or demote it into the B tier? If we look at some of the other items that we have, a lot of this stuff is not equivalent to Alchemy Carbine. So all of these items do completely different things than this does. All of these items, except maybe the Molotov, do very different things than this. And like bonus points, you could actually pair Molotov with the Carbine. Like shoot Carbine once and then just run around and throw the Molotov on Timekeeper. Chances are you'll actually deal some damage. Am I willing to make it an S though? That's the real question. It can pair amazingly with anything that gets 100% to poison. And that's true. Yo! Oh, reliable. Old Harriet. Old Henrietta up here in the, it's heavy. Is there an HEV name? I don't think so. But I like Henrietta. Up here in Triple S, just like J-Mac intended. Thank you, J-Mac, for that T1 sub. I appreciate that very much. Hope you are having a good Tuesday. I don't have any, like, love or anything like that. I'm gonna just do a fake love. Just pretend like the bot is broken right now. But hope you're having a good day, J-Mac. Wow. So, Brutality. This thing's split. Purple red. The Brutality Hokuto combined with the Brutality Alchemy Carbine, that's an S-rank build by itself. The Brutality sometimes struggles to get poison affixes. Most of the poison you have to get from a starred affix on a skill. So that's like bleeding causes poisoning. That is... I guess you could go flamethrower and get a toxic cloud on your flamethrower. But no grenades do poison on hit, except maybe the powerful grenade. But that sucks. I think Wormettes can get it too. But that also is kind of lame. So if we think about Alchemic Carbine as one of those items that don't do... one of those items that do stuff no other item can do. I feel as though that justifies it as being an S tier. I would just hate for someone to take this and not make a build out of it. That's the only thing you can't do. It's almost like a placeholder in most circumstances. It just needs something else with it. And you can kind of think of that as Hokuto, as the Speight Sword also had the same scenario, where as long as you actually put some brain power towards Alchemic Carbine, you can get a win rate out of that thing, at least in red. Tactics, I'm sure it can too, but I feel like Tactics has a lot more options for getting poison than this. But maybe this actually saves you a slot. And you can also play Save the Owls with Alchemic Carbine. You just play Carbine with a shield, run Owl, and you just walk through biomes, just as if you had Hokuto Bow. And then as soon as you find Hokuto, you just ditch the shield, and you run both of these. So I actually think I'll leave it as an S, just until we figure out what would I take over Carbine in a circumstance where build doesn't matter. I'm like sitting on my wallet. Wallet's too fat. Got too many like store rewards cards. Not even cash. It's just like straight up gasoline rewards, restaurant rewards, movie rewards, all just trash in my wallet. Let's keep it going. Fire Blast. We're making good time too. Maybe we can actually finish in 30 minutes. So Fire Blast. Fire Blast, I also used to be a real hater. Holy crap, I had this thing in the D tier. Like, not even good enough to have it as a C. That's kind of screwed up. But I used to really not like Fire Blast. And I think I was playing it all wrong this whole time. The only Fire Blast that I had any value over was with Oil Grenade. Like, if I don't have Oil Grenade, it's a trash item. It is a placeholder that just gets me through prison quarters. Once I get out of prison quarters, I don't care about this thing anymore. It's gone. But now we've kind of like changed our mindset when it comes to the tier list. It's not quite about items that are completely busted or items that if you are like decent at the game, there's a real like reward from using it. Now we're starting to think about win rate. Like, if you pair this with specific stuff, your win rate might skyrocket, might go through the roof. You may never drop a game ever again. And I feel as though Fire Blast is one of those items where if you pair it right, your win rate goes up. Now, I don't think it's an S because there's a lot of stars that have to align, in my opinion, for this to work. You have to have an oil source, and you have to have gameplay. And what I mean by gameplay is being able to dodge Hand of the King, or dodge through the bullcrap from Timekeeper. In the case of demons are immune to fire, you have to be aware of that. In the case of High Peak Castle, you have to deal with the Guardians, the spinny guys, the Lancers that can outrange you. So I don't think I can make it an S, but if I think about it in the same terms of assault rifle, where if you make the build, if you spend even an ounce of brain power putting the build together, you could actually get a good winning game with Fire Blast. And I say that as someone who absolutely hated this weapon. I'd say the brutality, and that's probably the fault of tactics, but I would say the brutality version, basically this with this, that spreads oil, or this with like the oil grenade with Instincto, probably better than the tactics version. The tactics version is good because you can run a turret and run support. That way you don't have to necessarily go Hokuto Bow. You could go with a shield, or you could go with, we don't really have, I guess this. I've done this before, where you do one shot of the carbine, and then you just sit on the monster and hold square. And that will kill Hand of the King. I can confirm that. And not a lot of other items can do that out of the bottom here. So I actually think A is perfectly reasonable. That's a heck of a promotion though out of the D tier. And again, I said this was D because the gameplay was not that great. It involves a lot of dodging and being able to not greed out for your attacks. But so long as you put the gameplay behind it and make a build out of it, you can probably win a game on every difficulty. Ice Shards. Now, Ice Shards is probably one of my favorite items in the game. I actually really like the Ice Shards. For some reason, I can't stay away from this item. It's just good, clean fun. Fun for everybody. Rated E item right here. I have it in the A tier because even though it got nerfed, it still does stuff. Just not broken. So it did get nerfed. That was back in version 1.2, I think. So anyone who's still playing console right now, I think you have the super strong version of Ice Shard. Might be able to fact check that. But they nerfed it so it has an ammo cost. 3 ammo, wow, that's actually nothing. And then you have to wait for it to come back. So it's not an S because it got nerfed. What it does still do is when you're playing Brutality, it can slow monsters. When you're playing Tactics, it can slow monsters. When you're playing Brutality, you can crit in oil. When you're playing Tactics, you can crit in oil. You can play fake Tactics with Brutality, pairing it with Kunai. But like, I don't know if that's the Kunai that's really doing all the work, or is it the Ice Shard? When you're playing Tactics, you can pair this with a turret or with an owl that spreads oil and get off really good damage off just the Ice Shard. Now, I would say eventually I would want to ditch it, like for a real competitive build. So I think it will be demoted down to the A tier. Now, in the terms of like using it as just a slow source, like that to me is almost placeholder gameplay. I feel as those like secondary items are almost wasted on CCing monsters, unless it's Boyax, Ice Bow, or Frost Nova. These apply a slow and they apply the freeze. This only applies slow, it just deals damage instead. So I feel as though it's not quite a worse slow, but I would value this thing more as a damage source. And the damage source has been nerfed, and now we can't have it as an A. And this is sad because I still use this thing every time I see it. And that's not always the right choice. I feel as though maybe I had Ice Shard in Sepulcher? Maybe not. That's not Sepulcher. Yeah, so this is the setup where... And look at the... This was such a fun day. This is a setup where I had a an Alchemy Carbine that has oil on hit, and then I eventually took an owl that has oil on hit. And the Ice Shard's really good, but eventually I got to the point where I could just kill everything with just the owls. And in that case, it's like not really the Ice Shard that's doing anything. Crap, I just skipped over what the build was. Yeah, I would love to see an attack come out from the Ice Shard. But I keep like going to items. Okay, here we go. Here's some gameplay. And what I'm gonna show is that a critical hit from the Ice Shard does competitive damage. It's just the cooldown is super balanced. Ice Shard deserves better. Yeah, that was a 15k shot, which is probably enough to one-shot Lil Homie. The Dark Tracker. Yeah, I'm not even using the Ice Shard in that circumstance. So, like I said, that comes from the same mindset that as soon as I can get like a competent build, I'll probably ditch the Ice Shard for it. But the Ice Shard is good enough to get you through the entire game. So I don't think it's like bad enough to have it as a D tier. I think it's still better than these two as far as like win rate is concerned. And that's really grasping. I almost feel like I really should put it as a C tier, but I'm a big fan of the Ice Shard. Maybe that's just like my own gameplay. I'm so used to Ice Shards that we can almost make any build work if it has an Ice Shard behind it. So from a Veedotme standpoint, this is probably where that deserves to be. Next, Pyro. Pyro. Pyro used to be a B. That's okay, I guess. I am a hater. I absolutely despise pyrotechnics. They buffed it, as a matter of fact. They buffed it so that you can hold square to get off the full combo, just like you would with a quick bow. No need to spam. Now you just sit back and you just lob volleyballs at the enemy. Supposedly it's good. I would say my own win rate with the pyrotechnics is probably 0 at this point. Every time I take pyro, and sure, some of those were quadruple damage pyrotechnics. I will admit, taking 4 times the damage is probably not good. But I really expected this thing to decimate monsters with quadruple damage, and I feel as though it didn't. I also don't like the combo at all. So what it does is it does like 2 shots, and then I think it waits a half second, fires the 3rd shot, and then it waits like another half second, and then it lobs the 4th shot. And the combo, I feel, is a little clunky, and maybe you're not even supposed to hold square. Maybe that's my problem, is that I'm actually trying to do that auto-target, hold square gameplay, but it's not even good at that. Maybe you're supposed to press square every time. So I'm actually gonna deduct a point for its combo. Now, in terms of the actual thing it's supposed to do, long-range napalm bombardment, like actual artillery mage. I think it does that to a degree. It's better than Marksman Bow. I hate this weapon. I really do. And that's not to say that you can't use it. There's builds out there. We've seen builds that are incredible. Like, okay, I got the pyro, I'm throwing stuff, whoop-de-doo. Playing b-ball with the monsters, LeBron out there throwing fireballs. I'm sure it's awesome. I'm sure there's Reddit bangers all over the place, all screaming, this is the item to use. But for the Veedotme tier list, I hate this item. It's almost a D tier for me. If people don't actually care, like, I can get hate mail right now. I can get someone that comes in and says, V, bow and endless quiver? As an F tier, you're trolling. Pyrotechnics as a C tier? Clearly this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. I've won so many games with Pyro, he has it as a D. His opinion is instantly invalidated. That's fine, I don't mind. Because that means we're having a discussion. If we can have a discussion about Pyro being a potential D tier item, I love it. That's great. If I just tap square and like read the battlefield, I think I would be better at Pyro, but I would just hold square if I were to do that with this thing. You lose out on range, but I feel like the gameplay requirement between Pyro and Fire Blast has flip-flopped. Previously, it was reversed. B, D, now we're looking at A, C. So I actually think that's where we're gonna land with the pyrotechnics. And again, if anyone like really uses that item, thinks it's T1 Vape Nash in the S tier, please let me know, because I gotta see it. I've tried it multiple times. I haven't won a game yet in like 1.5. Boomerang. Used to be a beast of a weapon, then it got giga nerfed, and now it ain't a beast no more. I still use it though. I use it whenever I don't have a build. Technically, that makes the placeholder item. I feel as though me putting it in the D tier is disrespectful to the boomerang. But if I were to tell somebody, and this is the argument that we used with Flint. I think we used that same argument with Flint about, for me personally, I think it's an amazing item. Whenever I use it, I pop off with it, kinda, like little baby pop-offs. Like enough to get you into like Silver 2, but not enough to get you into like the Gold divisions. So Boomerang, I feel like, is another item that I can't really, in 2020 that is, a new player to use Boomerang to get their 5th boss cell. I feel like that's just a recipe for disaster. I will tell you to unlock it though, because I feel as though the unlock is worth it. Like, you can actually get through a couple biomes with the Boomerang, but if someone was to beg and plead me for a build to get out of 2BC baby jail, it does not involve Boomerang. Not in 2020. No, we finished Boomerang. So now we have all Rise of the Giant weapons left. So Boy Axe. Boy Axe before the massive global nerf. So the global nerf I'm talking about, is players can't equip 2 weapons. In the past, we had double boy, double gentleman, the double young man coming out just juggling on monsters. And monsters couldn't defend themselves. It was actually very sad. Probably a PETA moment, as a matter of fact. But what was really cool was that it worked in tactics, it worked in brutality, and it was really potent. Like, it did stuff. So now, in a world where only one man exists, it's not an S. In a world where you can't spam monsters to kill them, you just have to throw it and let it stick, is actually pretty good at doing that. So, what to compare it to? I think I think Boy Axe is almost like a brutal version of Ice Bow. Ice Bow has the advantage of actually applying the status of Ice and Slow. Those statuses affect other stuff, and Boy Axe doesn't do that. What Boy Axe has instead is a DPS number. I think it can apply stuff like oil. I think you can get like flaming trail and stuff like that. All of that's really not important. What really matters is the snare. I don't even really use Boy Axe for damage. Almost like Ice Shard. I use Ice Shard for damage. I don't really use it for the slow. I use Boy Axe for the snare and not damage. And I think as a snaring weapon, it actually does that job really well. I just don't really use it as a primary damage source anymore. It actually does, like, max DPS. What's a max DPS? Might be calculated off the rip and not... Oh, okay, so that makes sense. The first hit is the minimum damage, and then the max damage is the rip. So I actually like that. That's a total of 300 DPS, so that puts it on, like, Marksman Bow level. I feel like that's not accurate. I feel as though there's no way ripping out the boy does that much damage, but maybe it's true. It's a super solid weapon. I mean, you can win games so long as you pair it with something else. I don't think you can just win a game right off rip. Excuse me for the pun. I don't think you can do that with Boy Axe anymore. As a tactics weapon, I think Ice Bow is still good for stuff like the Owl, because it's faster overall. Like the biome clear while spamming Ice Bow shots, going monster to monster, is better than spamming Boyax shots. But Boyax does some stuff that Ice Bow doesn't do. For example, on elites, you can roll behind an elite, stick the axe in it, and the elite can't fight you anymore. It just has to stand there while you're dealing damage. And that's actually kind of cool. You're actually offended if it's not at least B. Yeah, I think it's better. I think it does its job very well. There's some stuff like Pyro, for example, that I feel doesn't do its job as well as some of the other stuff. But as far as point and click crowd control goes, I think this is pretty good at that. How good is it with Nutcracker? On monsters, it's very good. On Timekeeper, Javelin. Javelin is actually one of my third favorite item. Back in the day, and this thing got nerfed really fast. I don't know what happened. When Rise of the Giants came out, you used to be able to run double Javelin with bonus ammo. And you were running like 4 to 6 Javelins. And that's enough to kill monsters. They double nerfed it though. They nerfed it so that it has only 1 ammo. So the max ammo you can get on a Javelin that isn't legendary, I think, is 2. You also can't use double Javelin. So in that case, it's actually nerfed again. Now, I have used double Javelin. I used it not too long ago, as a matter of fact, and we took it all the way to the end of the game. Oh, it's only 1 Javelin. So I used double Javelin against the true final boss.
I hope it works.
And it was struggle street.
Head to bed, all right, Lycos. Glad to have you here. Wow.
So look at the damage.
Was good.
Now this is a pretty bad build in general. Like this kind of build needs poison. It probably needs a turret. But look at the monster clear. Like I can basically one-shot almost all the monsters. Something like this requires probably 3 Javelins total. But if you do that, it's actually pretty potent.
Rip no hit.
But that's all it does. But it's pretty good at clearing biomes, I will say that. It's not quite free clear. We have some free clear weapons in the melee tier list. That was stuff like Swift Sword. Swift Sword was the perfect example where even though it should lose points for not being good at killing bosses, it gets extra points for the biome clear. I feel as though Javelin loses points on bosses for sure. Biome clear, it's probably pretty decent. Probably about on par with the Ice Shard for clearing biomes. A lot of people, though, don't like the Javelin when it doesn't kill a monster. For example, you're in Graveyard. This is like the perfect example. You're in a graveyard where there's cannibals, slashers, and grapplers. If those monsters don't die from Javelin, you're probably in trouble. If you have any other weapon, say Quick Bow. If you have Quick Bow, maybe you just shoot down the hallway with a Quick Bow. Now sure, the Javelin helps to reduce all the monsters' HP. You can run it with Parting Gift and drop bombs, so if anything dies, at least that one thing drops a bomb and potentially kills the monsters next to it. So that is kinda decent, but I feel as though at the end of the day, not that it's a meme weapon, but if someone was to ask me, Is Javelin the right choice to get me my 5th boss cell? Again, that's... So we're talking win rate, we're talking busted weapons. Those two together combine in one to increase your win rate. I feel as though this item is not one I would tell someone who's fresh into 4BC, what do I need to get my 5th boss cell? This ain't it. It'll do some stuff. Like once you're actually getting through dead cells, once you've looped through the game multiple times and you understand how stuff works, you understand what it takes to kill a slasher, then I think Javelin actually does stuff. And I've used Javelin a lot. Like, I actually like it. I'll take double Javelins if I see it. Like, that, to me, is almost Boomerang level good. But if I had to choose between one or the other, I will probably take the Javelin. Just because you can kill stuff off screen. And that's something that Boomerang certainly cannot do, is kill monsters off my screen. Alright, 3 more. Magic Missile, aka Gallic Gun. This is the key blast for anyone who's been playing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. This thing is previously an A tier. It was an A in the same vein as the throwing knife. And I thought in the past that the kunai and the Gallic Gun were on equal footing. They kind of do the same thing. They auto-target. Kunai has an ammo count, though, and Magic Missile does not. Kunai applies bleeding, Magic Missile doesn't do anything. Sometimes you can get a Magic Missile that applies poison. That involves fishing, but it doesn't do anything. It's basically like a shovel in that case. Kunai has been buffed. They actually increased the DPS in version 1.6. Magic Missile, they haven't done anything with. I think it's worse than Kunai, though. I think I can say that with decent certainty that it's worse than Throwing Dagger. If I were to play tactics, I would take Throwing Knife over Magic Missile. What is Magic Missile except Pyro that can't synergize with oil? So Magic Missile is, like I said, it's a Gallic Gun. It's designed for you to jump in the air and just like like just destroy monsters on the ground. Have like explosions coming up, the special finish in DB Fighter Z. But I think that fantasy isn't quite there. It's good, but I think the damage is kind of low. And when you're fighting something like Timekeeper, when you're fighting something like Hand of the King, this is a problem. Like, I need to kill Hand of the King ASAP before something bad happens. I can't be sitting around doing like negligible damage on that. As far as the auto targeting goes, I think Electro Whip is better in terms of auto targeting. Now, this is where this is gonna get a little controversial, because I feel as though Magic Missile is really, really cool in all difficulties until you hit 4BC and higher. Jokes aside, Magic Missile with Piercing was your first 4BC giant win, and it was super solid. Yeah, I think Magic Missile versus the Giant specifically is a very good fight. I still feel like there's better. I feel like this stuff, maybe not this, maybe not this, but potentially this, because this will rip through the eyeball. And then this got buffed, so versus the Giant, this will actually hit both the fist and the eyeball at the same time. So I am having a weird situation with Magic Missile. And when I pair these two together, this is like really ugly to look at. Like, do I really value Lightning Bolt on the same level as a Magic Missile? back in the day, I would say no. Like, survival lightning bolt was next level, in my opinion. Tactical lightning bolt, it's okay. And maybe that's what I feel about magic missile. It's okay. I feel like it's better than this stuff as far as like winning a game. So I'm actually saying that it's probably better than Pyro because the combo is better. And I'm sorry, I was reading chat for a quick second. This thing kills Shantae and 5BC. That's true. The auto-targeting on this is very, very good. These two also have auto-targeting. So I was thinking that, like, if I was coming up to a librarian and I had a choice of weapons, I feel as though I'd rather have one of these two. Hey, Delighted, thanks for that follow. So pros and cons. Pro, it has flotation, but so do these. Pro, it has auto-targeting, but so do these. Pro, it can apply poison on hit on, I think, a fairly decent reroll. Like, fairly common that you can get that. Con, the base DPS is low. It doesn't crit. A lot of monsters, boss-wise, are ticking time bombs where this thing, you can't have this be the issue. Now, if you pair this with Hokuto Bow, the damage might be pretty good, but I think I would rather just take one of these two with Hokuto Bow over Magic Missile. Yeah, it is really good. I think the poisoning Magic Missile is the, like, saving grace for this item. And now, like, I'm a little worried about how many items are in my B tier. So I think we'll probably have to do a lightning round after these last two items, just to figure out how to clean up this B tier. Next is the Hemorrhage. So Hemorrhage, this is where things get a little controversial. So I actually really like Hemorrhage. I think every game I've taken Hemorrhage with, I've won. And that's not all survival. I think Hemorrhage, almost like Heavy Crossbow, is a really good built for HP tactical weapon. Like, you can actually win some games regardless of your scroll count, because Hemorrhage does a lot of things. It applies a dot. It works on the giant in the case of, like, networking. It works on Hand of the King. It has crowd control because the breach is really powerful. People say that the issue is that it's slow. It just has a wind up. It's no slower than probably Lightning Bolt. Like, the amount of time it takes for the Lightning Bolt to come out and then crit, I could throw, well, like, wheel back and then throw the Tomahawk. And then it also applies dot. And it also crits. Yeah, it has an ammo count. I have had situations where I did have to run ammo with the Hemorrhage. So I think in that case, it's not an S. Only because there's certain moments where I needed ammo and I didn't have it. That's where this thing falls off hard. Nerves of Steel kind of has that same scenario. Personally, I think it's better than Nerves of Steel. Like, once you get to 5BC, I would rather have Hemorrhage over Nerves of Steel. Like, almost any day of the week. Whether it be purple or green, I think it's better than Nerves of Steel. Would I consider bringing it down for this other stuff? I don't know. I think it's actually, like, one of the better weapons in the game. And for those who have never used Hemorrhage, Hemorrhage is a 5BC weapon. It actually takes a trip to the Astrolab and killing a monster that spawns on that map to get the Hemorrhage. Otherwise, you can't find it. And I think out of all the 5BC only weapons, except for this stupid thing here, it's probably the best one. Until they, I don't know if they're ever going to consider making more of those, but I feel as though this is the best 5BC only weapon in the game. Then again, Thunder Shield's also really good, but I'm not going to spoiler that. Like Patata's saying, it has self synergy. You can get these that have bonus damage to poison. You can get them with bonus damage to bleed. And that's the love that we have for Hemorrhage. Whenever this thing appears, games are just won. It's crazy. I don't know if that means it's an S rank, because I feel as though the ammo count is like a giga nerf to this item. 5 ammo and you can run ammo mutation. I just don't know if ammo mutation is a good mutation. If you can get away with not using ammo, that's much better than having to use it. So I think I have to leave it as an A, only because you might be nerfed using ammo as a mutation. Alright, so last item. Sonique Crossbow. Sonique I actually had as a C tier. Back in the day, I actually considered Sonique Crossbow just a fun weapon, almost on par with the assault rifle. It's like, it's just spray and pray. Like, I don't really care what my build is, I just use it as DPS. That's all I care about. Just give me some kind of damage source. And as I started using Sonique Crossbow more and more, I started to not find a single build that I liked with it. Wait, this is like, is this even right? It's supposed to crit enemies, which it has the crit here, but it only crits if you're actually shooting through a target. So the target has to have another target behind it, and that's when you crit. Almost like a War Spear. It's basically a ranged version of War Spear. And you all know where War Spear landed. You all can see it. That's a War Spear in the F tier. So, by that logic, a ranged version of War Spear is probably an F tier. Now, the real question is, do I actually sell this thing every time I see it? And the answer is yes. I sell Sonique Crossbow every time I see it. I have yet to take this thing all the way through the game because it doesn't do anything, in my opinion. It does damage, sure. It's better than this. So in that case, I should probably make it a placeholder. I don't even take it as a placeholder half the time. I think I sell Sonique Crossbow every single time I see it. So I am so sorry to any Sonique Crossbow advocates in the chat. Back in the day, people used to really like put Sonique Crossbows on the pedestal. They used to say like, oh, like being able to blast monsters in front of me, it's the coolest thing ever. I love the feeling of doing that. In all honesty, it is like pretty fun. But in my mind, it's a ranged War Spear. And to me, that's not good. Like, not to say that it needs to do more, but it probably needs to do more. Or at least let me aim up. I think if, so for example, I think the best buff that this thing could get is if you could hold square, shoot forward, and be able to angle it in any direction, up or down. So that way you can kill bats, and you can kill, like, well, you can kill worms, because you can duck with this weapon. But if you could aim up, if you could, like, shoot in an arc, I think that would be real compelling gameplay that's better than War Spear. But all it does is shoot in front of you. It's like a worst Fire Blast. Fire Blast does everything this does, but better. what's the damage? So 136 non-crit versus 100 plus it applies burn. So that burn will actually deal additional damage on top of the 100. The crit is non-existent because it's a war spear, which means it doesn't really crit. I mean, yeah, it'll crit some stuff, but I'm not mobbing in 4 BC. So I think that's where it lands, really. Tier list, but I like this. This is probably the first ranged tier list that I felt was true to my own beliefs. So I think it's gonna stick. I just want to have that one lightning round though, because I actually think that was a lot of fun. All right, lightning round. We're gonna take 5 minutes. It's 9:17 right now, and we are going to try to speed through every item. We're gonna talk about the reasoning as to why it's where it is, and at the same time, I'm gonna try my best to drop an item from the B tier. How important is mobility to you? Like damage dealt versus mobility? It's pretty important, but you can't lose. So for example, kunai to me is the precipice? What's the word? Either way, this is pinnacle movement versus damage dealt in Dead Cells. This is probably close just because there's a lot of flotation with this thing. But in my opinion, this is bar S movement damage dealt. Items that are really like tough to move around with, they could still deal a lot of damage. So like Valmont Whip, Broadsword, even Wrenching Whip. A lot of this stuff has a lot of stop and go gameplay, and I feel as though that's still very valuable if the damage and crowd control is behind it. I don't really put this stuff down here because of how slow it is. I put it down here because at the end of the day, yeah, these can win a game, but it's the win rate, the potential of just massacre boss, the potential of bosses just being deleted is non-existent with these items compared to the stuff up here where the builds are fantastic. All right, but let's start. It's 1919. Let's try to get through this by 9:25. Heavy crossbow does stuff no other item does in the game. Crowd control, ridiculous damage, and you can build pure rainbow with it if you want. It still does crazy damage no matter what. One shots almost every lobby in the game. Elites can't fight you. Monsters literally uninstall the game when you walk into the biome with this. That's how good this item is. Kunai, in my opinion, the best bleeding source in the game next to Quiver. Best mobility ranged item. Can use it almost better in brutality than you can in tactics. This is the key to fake tactics games. Very good item. Quick bow, probably the best risk reward weapon in the game. If you can actually perform with this weapon, monsters die. It fishes better than marksman. It does close range gameplay better than infantry. It's just all around good. There's nothing it's bad at except the fact of ammo count. Alchemy Carbine, again, does something that no other item does, and that's apply poison and bleed without an affix. Or is it just poison? I don't even remember. Just poison. So it applies a poison cloud. No other weapon just gives you point and click poison without having to roll for it. You combine that with a lot of other weapons. Weapons deal double damage to stuff that's poison, if it has that affix. So this can help accelerate your games too, and it can also kill monsters relatively on its own. Hokuto Bow, I've been sleeping on this thing for years. I think it's time to put it in the S tier. Does, again, stuff that no other item does. Increases your damage double or something. High number, so long as you actually build around it. Electric Whip got buffed. Hits monsters in an area. Auto tracking. Flotation gameplay. No crit, so that's the only thing that's bad about it. But besides that, it doesn't really have a lot of minuses. Assault rifle, aka the repeating crossbow, does exactly what it says, spray and pray. Combine that with a build and you can win games. That's basically the Speight Sword concept, where if you build towards it, you can actually have a win rate increase, a win rate boost using that. Fire Blast, same deal. Like, straight out of the box, it's probably a D tier item. It's only enough to get you through Promenade. But once you start applying a build towards it, the curve, it just shoots straight up. Brutality version, in my opinion, is better than Tactics. I would pair this with Hokuto Bow, pair this with the Oil Source. If you're running Tactics, pair this with the Oil Owl. Fantastic stuff. Hemorrhage, again, nothing else does what it does. It is a self-synergizing, long-range artillery weapon. Short range, it can like breach enemies because the damage is so high. Crits for Instincto. Applies dots for your skills. Really good. Nerves of Steel, it's like a worse quick bow in my opinion. The ammo count is kind of lame, but if you can get around that with a shield, you can probably do really well in survival. Tactics, I probably won't use this. I take anything in here above it, but Tactics, I probably take it better than anything below. Molotov, combine this with the builds that it's supposed to be used with. That's Oil Sword, that's, crap, I was thinking of all the other stuff. Knife, throwing knife, sometimes Ice Shard. You throw this, and then you throw turrets onto the ground. You can throw this with the Owl, and just do, like, running gameplay where the Owl is the main damage source. This is like a cheap Hokuto Bow. As soon as you find the Hokuto, you replace this. Or you can use both if you really want to. Those builds are kind of different. But this is another key player in fake tactics. Boyax, probably the best point-and-click crowd control, where you just throw it and then you attack with whatever you have. And elites can't defend themselves. Ice Bow, another point-and-click crowd control. You stop a monster, you apply ice, you apply slow. Those work with mutations. Frost Nova does the same thing. It's actually called Frost Blast, but I got Frost Nova from Ragnarok Online because I've been playing that game for years. No, it is called, yeah, Frost Blast. But I've been calling it Frost Nova. Frost Nova, it applies the freeze in an area in front of you. Fake tactics, I did mean fake tactics. If I said fake brutality, it is still kind of fake brutality, but you are actually brutality. So it's like poser brutality. I think that's the right word. Applies the freeze to everything in front of you. It's better as survival than Ice Bow is. But I feel as though Ice Bow is better as tactics than Frost Blast. Ice Shard, I think I'm gonna take Ice Shard down. I think I'm probably the only person that builds Ice Shard in the way that I do, which is you pair it with an oil source. If there's people out here using it as a secondary, that's probably the right way to use it. And even then, as a slow source, I probably just use an S rank item as my secondary. It's still good though. It can win games. I've done that before. But I can't tell people to use this to get their 5th boss, so. Lightning Bolt got nerfed. It's no longer survival. It's tactics only. I feel like that takes it out of the S tier. Not even an A, because I'd rather have Repeater Crossbow than Lightning. Magic Missile. This thing is pretty generic. It's a worse Knife Dance in my opinion. And I feel like it's a worse Electric Whip now that Electric Whip got buffed. This thing is just a generic weapon. I feel as though Quick Bow's better. It's good though, just not worth building around. Same thing here, very good. It could get you through every biome in the game, but in terms of win rate, I would probably ditch this for a true build. Pyro, I really hate the combo to this, but I know that people in chat have success with it. So I just know I'm a hater, so I'm gonna actually average it out my D with chat's A equals a C. Javelin. Javelin does clear biomes. If you don't kill a target with the Javelin, it's at least half HP, so you better have a plan. It can stunlock elites in a wall, so that's pretty good, but it does nothing to bosses. Triplex Bow, I ditch this as soon as I can. I just use it to get out of toxic sewers. Ice Crossbow, I ditch this whenever I can. I just use it to spam square because it's kind of fun to see. Marksman Bow, if I'm gonna fish for monsters, I'm gonna do it with either Quick Bow, Hemorrhage, Javelin, or Nerves of Steel. I am not gonna fish for Marksman for the whole game. I'm gonna ditch it as soon as I can. Boomerang, Giga nerfed into the ground. It still does stuff. Whenever I see the chance to run double Boomerang, I do it, but at the end of the day, I probably could have just spent those resources on a real build. Bow and Endless Quiver. This is not meeting the combo fantasy I feel that the devs intended. If they can just rework the combo into something cool, I think they have a real item on their hands. And then Sonique Crossbow, I feel as though this is a ranged version of Javelin, does nothing on its own, pierces monsters, that's cool, I guess, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have any other item in the game. I just sell it whenever I see it. I don't even bother trying to use it because I could throw, in my opinion, I could throw the game by taking this, just like I can throw the game by taking Javelin. That's why it's also F. Alright, so I was able to, like, square this off just a little bit. We have a lot of demotions, as a matter of fact. We have demotion, demoted, promoted, demoted, down, stay, down, up, down, stay, down, no. Wow, I've always had this as a D rank? I didn't know that. Promoted because survival got new mutations. That's really important to know. This stays, and then this got a really big promotion. Super promotion on the Electro Whip. And then this, like, years later, it's still an F. That's so sad. Jeez. Alright. We are actually good. That is a ranged tier list. I'm gonna save that. Ranged tiers 1.6. I'm gonna hit it with the download first. That way I don't forget, because I keep forgetting to do that.